Our media product was of the horror genre and is categorised into the subgenre of ghost horror. We apply to this convention of horror by using the black and white colour schemes, which portrays the connotations of emptiness and death. Not only is this development convention of ghost horror, but it also applies to our target audience of mid-teen emos, as black and white is heavily associated with the dress sense of our target audience.
Our use of sound also applies to our genre convention. For our opening soundtrack, we used a non-copyright score that blended together ambient sounds with garage band effects such as synthesizers and intense background tones. This was done so that the audience were immediately addressed and the intense nature of the ghost horror was kept at maximum. Also, the added sound effects of crunching leaves and the recording of someone whispering Alice added a creepy tense tone to our film.
We also used the location of Tunstall Court and the area of deserted trees to portray the lonely tone of ghost horror and show how vulnerable and helpless Alice is, in which a stereotypical trait of main characters in ghost horrors because they're usually up against some strong force.
We also sped up some parts of the editing where there are snapshots effects of Alice showed less than a second after each other. By increasing some of the editing process, we were attempting to give tension and suspense and make the audience feel confused and comfortable in their seats, which is the main purpose of ghost horrors. However, we did challenge overall conventions of horror by choosing not to have any blood or goriness, and we took a huge gamble by implying some of the backstory and the suicide idea, though use of the creative newspaper clippings in the editing stages.
Our film took most inspiration from the BBC series The Turn of the Screw, as we wanted to base our overall theme on paranormal narratives, and we were already familiar with The Turn of the Screw from our exam preparations.
And because we were already familiar with it, it meant we already had a rough outline in our heads in the pre-production stages of what characters, locations and possible props we could include.
The textual similarity with our film, The Turn of the Screw, is the use of over-saturated colour schemes and the black and white effect.
Another example is the jump cuts of Alice, as they echo the jump cuts used in The Turn of the Screw to mirror both characters' confusion and unsettled mental states.
We had to get to grips with a whole wide range of new technology with our film project compared to our preliminary task back in September. In the planning stages we were introduced to Blogger. The site was crucial in showing evidence of our developments and how we progressed as a group. We learned how to post new blogs and how to get material off each other's blogs, and we were all up to the stage.
We were shown how to use Slideshow. SlideShare is a site that allows the user to upload created PowerPoints and converts them into a format that will allow them to show up on our blogs. Once we had converted them, we also learned how to copy and paste links from SlideShare and embed the links into the new blog posts successfully.
We were introduced to Prezi through a class demo of our teacher. Prezi is a presentation editing device that differs from normal PowerPoints. It allows the user to adjust colour schemes of the background, whether they are template or completely from scratch. It also allows them to add clips from the system or even add photos and clips from YouTube. The pathway also has to be determined, in other words, in which order of the information would get shown. A Prezi can be bright, random and unlimited in space, and we found using Prezi to plan was very helpful and was an artistic way to bring our planning together.
We used iMovie to edit our film on. We became familiar with cropping clips, adding audio, arranging title sequences and inserting transitions and effects to make our film seem more fluid and professional. Whilst on the subject of our title sequence, we used LiveType to create titles from scratch. I was able to change the colour, the font, the effect and the path it moved on the screen. We also used GarageBand to create orchestrals and loops of sound effects for our film, for example the leaves crunching in the ambience of the environment. This helped add more of a sense of realism in our film. We also used Photoshop to create our logo. We had to look online for soundtracks that would fit the mood and conventions of our horror film. At the same time we also had to make sure they weren't copyrighted, so that we weren't doing anything illegal.
We used very basic filming equipment that consisted of an HD handheld camera and a tripod. This meant that we had to make the most of what we had and to stick to realistic methods of angles and shots and still kept them as effective as possible.
However, all of the filming equipment was in high demand, and so Jordan had to bring in his own film equipment, which was really helpful to us. And also we had to get creative with camera techniques. For example, the director wanted a tracking establishment shot which started from the left side of Tunstall Court mansion and would finish at the right side of the building. We didn't have the equipment to do this properly, so we attempted to steady the camera on the handlebars of the bike and steadily push it along the front of the building. However, this was too shaky and we couldn't use the shot, which was a disappointment.
We also faced a major problem during the filming stages as our chosen actress who we have selected to play Alice lived out of town. This made it awkward to try and organise our filming schedule, and then in the end, one of our group members had to take the camera on for the weekend and film in another area that looked deserted and lonely. It's also important to point out that Tunstall Court was set on fire one of the days we were scheduled to film. This proved another difficult obstacle to overcome, and we had to quickly look for another location that fitted the bill. We had to settle for a little huddle of trees next to Tunstall Court mansion.
Analyse a trailer of a film that was the same genre as we were basing our film on. We had to take a total of 9 screen grabs and edit them all together using Photoshop, which was good because as well as writing a little paragraph on how each shot was effective, we got to grips with Photoshop elements. We also had to watch a film individually and study the opening credits and make a storyline of when and what order the credits came. This helped us visualise what our opening title credits would pan out to look like.
This was a good learning curve for us because we had more of a smoother idea of how things are supposed to look in the films, and we knew what we could do to make our film flow nicely from the credits to the opening action sequence. We also created a genre mind map of all the conventions you would expect to see the horror touching on sound, mise-en-scène and cinematography. After we'd done all this, we were able to start drawing up plans for our own characters and narratives.
This also ensured that we weren't displaying conventions of horror in the wrong ways. For example, we wouldn't expect the setting to be sunny and a load of people playing happily, because this breaks the convention and the doom and gloom of the ghostly horror. Rebuttal was a crime film, and we didn't research or put anywhere near as much planning into it, and therefore we never knew how we could include conventions of that particular genre. One of our major differences between Alice and Rebuttal is the storyboard stage.
While planning Alice, we put a lot of thought into the storyboard and animatic, and annotated each scene in detail by commenting on possible elements of mise-en-scène, editing, sound and cinematography that we would use. This at least gives us a strong starting point and foundation to build up from. We also completed call sheets that included cast and crew contact information, filming location, props that would be used and those responsible, it would be provided to them.
This time around, I think as a group and as individuals, we've all had ideas to chip and get hold of the camera, so I think that shows how confident we've become with the equipment. We were more aware of how we could use specific shots to give certain effects. For example, in Alice, we used low angles, high angles, and long shots of the Tunstall Court mansion and our character, and edited them quickly together so that it created a confusing jump cut. This was purposely done to disorientate the audience and purposely confuse them. By doing this, we were shown evidence of knowledge of effects that jump cuts can have upon audiences,